Hi, Matthew. How are you doing today?
I'm very good, Aman. What about you?
I am doing well. It's an absolute pleasure to be able to sit here and talk to you.
Likewise, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. For anybody that is just joining in or does not know, Matthew is the managing director at Ulysse Nardin and comes with an extensive background in the watch industry, coming from Hamilton Watches, JLC, and then moving over to Ulysse Nardin. The first question I have for you, Matthew, is how do you correctly pronounce the name for JLC? This is something that's been all over. Some people call it Jaget, some people call it Jagger LeCoultre. How do you properly pronounce that name?
Yeah, actually, Gégère was French and Lecoultre was Swiss. So, but living in the French speaking part of Switzerland, so I would do it really the French way, which is Gégère Lecoultre.
Jager LeCoultre.
Yeah,
Perfect.
that's it.
We have that official now from Matthew, who worked at Jager LeCoultre. That is the proper way of saying it. Perfect. Thanks for clarifying that. Maybe we could start a little bit talking about your personal experience and what led you to Ulysse Nardin. What got you into watches in the first place? Why the career choice of watches instead of anything else? What's your background? What got you into watches? Really interested to learn all that.
So I'm 38 years old, and the journey started when I was 15. I was actually living not far from Paris, and one day I was basically hanging out with my parents in Paris, in the sixth district of Paris, Rue Madame, which is the name of the street. And I happened to stop in front of a shop window. I remember the name; it was Antoine de Macedo, and that shop was basically selling vintage timepieces. And I was really kind of amazed about what I saw in the windows, and I decided to enter the shop. But obviously, I was 15 years old, baggy jeans, a baseball, cap. So not the usual, collector or consumer for watches. But anyway, I stayed in the shop for maybe like an hour and a half,
Oh well.
and I mean I remember so many stories, that the watchmaker inside and the salesman, gave me about. Especially, I remember the conversation was about Breguet pilot watches, and I left that shop with definitely, a small flame that started to burn,
That's amazing.
and I think the passion started from there, and from that, I started to read everything I could read about, watches, buying magazines. And I think at some point, even at the age of 16 or 17, I knew every CEO names, and I knew, how they look like. But basically, that was basically the beginning of my passion for watches.
That's amazing. And you touched on something there about how you didn't look like the standard collector. And I think that's something that's really changing now too, is, you know, the look of a collector is becoming just a normal person. An average person is now getting more and more into watches. They're learning more about the movements. They're really being attracted to them. So, that's awesome for pretty much every single person that's walking into a store, right? Whether they're just finishing work and they're going in with their work boots on or walking in with a suit, like you have the ability to be a true collector. So
Yeah.
what was your first watch then that you bought for yourself? Like, because I imagine that your first watch, there was a lot of research that went into it, most likely, and something that said, yes, this is the watch for me that I want to have on my wrist now.
Yeah, absolutely. So of course, I had a couple of watches, before 15 years old. But I think really the one that I badly, wanted, once I started to develop the passion, was a Rolex Submariner, no date. And so obviously I was 15. I could not really pay myself. I didn't have that money neither. But I started to save. I started to save every single euro. I'm French. I was living in nearby Paris, and at some point, I started to have, 1,000, 1,500 euro, 2,000 euro, and I was looking at, the pre-owned market, and at some point I could afford, a Seamaster from Omega.
Nice.
I could afford, a aqua timer, from a Tag, or even, some of the chronograph. But I think I was at some point very close to buy some of those products, some of those timepieces. But I always have that sub in my mind, until the point where I think I had like less than 3,000 euro. And actually, what I did is I was, spending time on forums, and one of that forum was talking about a shop where you could buy online in Australia.
Okay.
And actually, the Australian dollar had depreciated quite a bit. So I remember being able to afford in Australian dollar a sub, pre-owned. So basically, that was the first watch I bought. So I was 18 years old. I paid with
Wow.
my credit card. And I remember receiving the watch actually in two parts. One was the watch, the other one was the box and papers. And honestly, I had no idea if, I was basically getting to receive them, but I paid. I trust, the community at that point of collectors that gave me the advice. And I will always remember the day that I went to the post office, and got the parcel coming from Australia, and kind of opened it and saw the Submariner. I was, wow, speechless.
Did it live up to the expectation?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Do you
To
still?
to one extent, and that's actually the only reason why I sold it afterwards, is because I saw a very, very, very small dot on the dial.
Okay.
Something very, very, very tiny, but I'm very picky in in what I buy. And so I saw that and I said, once I see it now, it's the only thing that I
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. You can't
And
unsee it.
so I sold it back to another collector. Obviously, I mentioned that dot, and he had absolutely no issue with it. And much later, I understood that at some point, when you have some very small default on the dial of a Rolex, it's even better
It,
somehow.
it's
So
yeah.
I should have kept it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so did you go out and acquire another no date sub?
So look, at that point, I was, spending a bit of time in Paris, and I kind of saw the sub on the wrist of every single guy. Especially, in restaurants, the waiters, the bartenders and so on. I mean, good for them, huh? But I kind of saw a lot of it.
Yep.
And I said to myself, that's probably not, what I want to buy now. But on my wish list is a 5513. I want to buy, that generation of sub Note 8. But I just want to figure out, some things that has not been modified.
Yeah, no,
I want it to be original, so I'm having a bit of a hard time to find one. If the community has somebody to refill or
yeah.
want to sell,
If
I'm a potential buyer.
if anybody has one for sale, reach out to Matthew. Yeah. It's amazing that one of the first watch that you wanted is still the one that has that flame going for you. And it's very interesting because even for me, my Grail watch was a Submariner date, and for me, it's because growing up, I saw people wearing it, and I remember the day that I got the call for my sub, and I have a 126 610, and that day meant it was something special for me, and I used it to mark a milestone in my life as well. So it's always good and interesting hearing about other people's their grails and what started their collection. Now, you mentioned that you didn't want something that was on everybody's wrist at that point.
Yes.
And I think that is a perfect segue into Ulysse Nardin because it is so different from what's on everybody's wrist. So maybe we can talk about what brought you to Ulysse Nardin and a little bit about what you do there.
Yes. So look, my first job into watches was being a rep for Zinn, SINN, watches in France. And the guy that hired me, and paid me 100% commission, so no fixed salary, kind of screwed me over and did not pay me in the end. So I had to move on and make a living. So I joined the Thrash group and worked for less than a year for Hamilton, then to Jaeger-LeCoultre for 6 years, and I think it's really at Jaeger-LeCoultre that I really got the love, but also the understanding of haute horlogerie, and really the love for complicated movements, the love for micromechanics. So I was not necessarily looking for a job, but I got headhunted by the Kering Group at that time, that used to own UN, and basically they offer me a job at I was not even 30 years old, to be basically the VP sales of the company. So I mean, it was for me a huge career shortcut, I would say, because I went from not managing people to managing a whole department. But I took the challenge because obviously I knew UN, and I knew that it was a proper watchmaking brand, but with a special flavor. Something that might not please everyone, but when you like it, you love it. So yes, and I think a brand also that had not been really that damaged, I would say, from an image perspective, from a distribution perspective, and so on. So I decided to take up the challenge, and here we are. Now it's almost 8 years, and
That's awesome.
and I'm also part of the team that took over the company from the Kering Group. So they basically sold the business to us, and I was recently appointing the managing director at the beginning of the year.
That's amazing. It's such a fantastic career in watches, and that's exactly why I said, we're super thankful and lucky to be able to sit down here and talk to you. You're just a wealth of knowledge. And if I'm not mistaken, I think you're wearing a Freak right now.
Yes, I'm wearing the Freak one.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if
So,
you see
yeah,
properly.
going from wearing a Submariner where everybody can recognize that watch to wearing the Freak one, what kind of reactions do you get? What do people ask you when they see that watch?
So first of all, and I think it's a case for pretty much every Freak, is it's a carousel, tourbillon, and actually the whole escapement, the balance wheel, is on the front of the dial. So now we are not the only one to do it, and actually I had lunch earlier today with Max from MBNF, and
Okay.
I love also what they do. But actually, Freak, when it came out, in 2001, was a revolution in terms of design. Having that movement telling the time was absolutely crazy and new at that time. So when you wear a Freak, it still gives the same impression of, but what the F are you having on the wrist?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
doesn't look like a normal watch, right? And so that's the first reaction. I think two, when people are paying really closer attention to it, they kind of get mesmerized, by what they see, because the fact that you got something live, moving,
Yep.
on your wrist makes a whole difference.
Yeah, and you get to
And
you get to really see the inner workings of the watch
yes,
right on display. Now,
absolutely.
me personally, like one of the things that draws me into the watch world is the combination of design and art with engineering and being able to put both of those together to be able to keep accurate time. Because if you look at a watch, I'm wearing my Speedmaster today, but it's really just a whole bunch of gears and cogs and little forks that do stuff, and it's able to keep time, within seconds a day, and it's mesmerizing. And I think the
Yeah.
Freak kind of, puts those two things, in perfect harmony together.
and and
So,
and and also, we are living in a world that goes, digital for everything, so.
mm,
And by the way, I've got nothing against an Apple Watch, because at the end of the day, I think it was an opportunity even for the luxury watchmaking industry, because it's putting a watch on the wrist of very, very young people that
yep,
basically might not have had the habit of having something on the wrist, right? But having said that, everything goes digital. Obviously, the smartphone, the some of the smartwatches, but obviously even the cars I mean, it goes, the route of not having any mechanics anymore, and somehow, the a mechanical watch is probably one of the very few things that exist on Earth that is, 100% mechanical, right?
Yeah,
And
that's true.
that's why also I love about it. And the Freak, I mean, basically is one of the most mechanical watch in a way, because you see the movement on the front of the dial.
Now, one of the questions that we've had from the community is to talk a little bit about the manufacturing process of the Freak and how it's built. Obviously, it's something that's very different. And as you said, when it was launched, it was the first watch essentially that was, putting the movement up front. What kind of manufacturing challenges did you guys have? How did you guys iterate that? What challenges still exist today? And how do you keep pushing the envelope for those?
Look, it's to describe you, exactly, the. I mean, let me put it this way. Uh, you've got you've got a few masterminds behind the Freak. So first of all, you have Rolf Schneider, who was the owner of the company from the 1980s. He basically acquired the company from the fifth generation of Nardin. He quickly recruited Ludwig Oschling to work on the complicated movement of Ulysse Nardin. So before, giving birth to the Freak, he gave birth also to, the Astrolabium Galileo Galilei that was listed in the Guinness Book of Record in 1989 as the most complicated astronomical timepiece ever created. You need to imagine that person also, when the Vatican, um, the most complex astronomical clock they have, was no longer operating. The only person in the world being capable to fix it was Ludwig Oschling.
Oh, wow.
He had to dismantle the whole thing, understood how it was operating, fix it, and basically assemble again. But he did not know
Amazing.
until, the last piece, that it was able to operate. But it did. So, and Ludwig is the father of the Freak. So he is a genius. He's a true genius. Like, and therefore, I mean, he was also the first person to be able to create a perpetua calendar that operate only with a crown, and that you can go backward and forward. It was also launched, that one, in 1996. So before even the Freak in 2001. And we had also a very, very clever engineer, Pierre Gigax, who pioneered the use of silicone. And he was working on that, on the side of having Freak. But Freak, you need to imagine that it was not necessarily supposed to be a watch in the end, because they had no idea if they were able to succeed or not. Freak was the code name of the project.
Got it.
And they wanted to create something that goes absolutely in the opposite direction of what traditional
Hmm.
watchmaking is. Plus, they wanted to bring a disruption in the watchmaking. So eventually they managed to do it, but it's a combination of three masterminds and probably a bit of luck.
Oh, that's absolutely amazing. One of my questions was, how did the name Freak come out? And it's amazing to hear that that was just an internal name that stuck around. It's
Yes, but when they managed, to actually be able to produce the watch, they said, okay, there
yeah.
is no better name actually.
No, that's
It
that's
has to
absolutely
be a
amazing.
Freak, right?
Yeah, and going into what you were talking about pushing the boundaries of what can be done with a watch and timekeeping in general. And I mean, for anybody that's not aware of the brand or what you guys make, like the UFO is such a crazy, I can't think of any other word, but it's like the first question that comes to mind is why? Right? Because it's such a limited production of the last, like the final run, right?
Yeah.
But then you look at it and it's like, this is because they could, right? The engineering and design that went into the last gen of the UFO is just spectacular.
You know, it was Paul David Nardin, so the second generation of Nardin, the son of Ulysse Nardin, um, who created the first marine deck chronometer in 1976. And actually, his motto was, "If it's possible, it's done. If
Hmm.
it's impossible, it will be done." So that's pioneering spirit in the company. I mean, has been there basically from the very beginning. It's not just since a freak. It's not just when Rolf Schneider took over the company and has developed the Perpetua calendar, the GMTs, the automatons, or even the astronomical timepieces. It's really rooted from the very beginning.
It's right into the DNA of the
Yes,
brand.
yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. Speaking of quotes, I have a quote here that I found. It was kind of talking about the UFO, and it says, "We always look ahead. We wondered what a marine chronometer designed in 2196 would look like." And that's kind of how they got the UFO. And
Yes,
yeah,
that was definitely the vision. The vision is we wanted to go back to the roots of having a lead chronometry, for marine instruments over almost a century. We were the market leader for that because we are just able to manufacture by far the most precise instrument in the world. But we wanted obviously to make it very much more contemporary. So obviously we are no longer, as we speak, clockmaker. So we did partner with Lepe, who they have an expertise in manufacturing clocks. So we did collaborate on that project, and at the end of the day, it's a pretty unique object. It's I mean it's giving you 3 time zone. You've got 1 year of power reserve. It's very playful because you can basically, I mean, yeah, actually play with it. It has a 6 kilogram tungsten, base, so that it's very stable at the same
wow.
time, and it's a beautiful object that you want to keep playing with it on your desk.
And a 1 year power reserve is like that's I
Yeah.
can't even put it into words. Like that's insane for a
Yes, it
one
is.
year
It's classic.
power
I agree.
reserve. That's amazing. So with Ulysse Nardin constantly pushing the boundaries of what they can do and finding what they can't do and then doing it, what's coming up? Like what's in the works right now that you can talk about?
Look, obviously, I'm not going to disclose the things that are under, the research and development department. But what I can tell you is, we do, even though we are independent, so we need to be very, careful on where we invest. But research and development, R&D remains a priority. And look, we are actually trying to innovate in different direction. One is trying to invent new materials in watchmaking. Another one is try to really push the boundaries of the escapement. So what if we could create at some point an escapement that operates without without any springs? So basically, no hairspring free escapement. We are also looking at different application of the silicon. And finally, one way also is to try to see what could be done in terms of métier d'art, but very creatively. So you've seen maybe a watch that we've launched a couple of years ago called the Blast Silicone Marquetry. So we pioneered the use of silicone in marquetry. So you have marquetry of wood, marquetry of straw, for instance, but never been done with silicone. So it's one way also to push the boundaries by creating basically new craft.
Oh, that's amazing. Now, one question that I did have, being in Canada, we don't have too many UN dealers here. So a lot of our audience that's, watching this video may have never held a UN or, seen one up close. What would you say to them about the brand for somebody who's never really physically interacted with the watch and been tactile with it to go out and try to learn more about this brand?
So, and actually, I should know it, but I don't know all the name of the retailer we have by heart. So, I think first of all would be to go to the website because we do have a point of sales. We have a limited distribution, but we do have a few point of sale in Canada, especially in Vancouver and Montreal. So, I would definitely recommend to go on our website and check the distribution over there. You will be able basically to see some of our watches. What might be an issue is trying to discover the Freak collection because Freak is the most exclusive collection we have. So it's a low production, a very low production collection, and I must say that the demand is growing and growing. So that means that the level of inventory we have in the point of sale is very limited, and actually it keeps going down. So it's a bit of an issue because it doesn't create a lot of opportunities, to see the product. I remember even, one of my friends collector, we are in a WhatsApp group together, and they wanted to do a get together in London and see some products, and yeah, they were quite disappointed because at some point, I think going to one of the flagship store we have, they were able to see, I think, maybe to try or maybe one or two freaks maximum.
Wow. Wow.
So, but at the same time, I don't want to be greedy and I don't want to, produce, and increase too much the production. So, seeing UNs definitely look up, the retail's point of sale we have on our website, and hopefully you will be able to try on a couple of freaks.
No, that's amazing. Now, when we're talking about the community and being able to take a look at UNs and learning more, maybe we can use that as a bit of a segue into what community means for you personally and how you're engaging with the community and how the community can reach out to you.
I think, I'm a collector myself. I think you got that from me. Today, I love watches and I collect watches. And therefore, I believe to me, a community is being able to meet like-minded people. Because it's true that when you've got that passion for watches, I mean, it's not a small passion. It's a passion that you can, be obsessed with.
It spirals out of control so
Yes,
fast.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Therefore, when I don't know, you end up in a room with somebody that doesn't have a clue about watches and doesn't like watches and that does not understand the meaning of spending that much, on
Yeah.
such a tiny product, you're not going to go far, right? So at some point, you have to create, occasions to to talk and to exchange and to interact with like-minded people. So for me, community for watches is to be able to interact with other collectors, watch enthusiasts, and to be able, ideally, to do it both physically and online, whether it's through WhatsApp group, Instagram, watch forums, but at some point having the opportunity to meet in the flesh. And actually, when you the how to say the when you've been creating relationship, for instance, online through forums or through WhatsApp group, and at some point you've got a possibility, to meet the guys. That's amazing because you can really put a face behind it, and so I think having that offline to online relationship with a small number of people, I mean, it's amazing.
Well, that's absolutely true. The Canadian watch community Facebook group, for example, exists just for that reason, as a community where people can talk about their passion for watches. And it doesn't matter if they have, a 50, $60 Casio, or if they have, these watches that go up to astronomical prices. It's about coming together for, a like-minded
Yeah.
passion. And that's amazing to hear that you follow kind of the same principle as our community does. Now, when we were talking before our call, you also mentioned interacting with people on your Instagram account. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about that and how you give back to the community
Yes,
through
yes.
Instagram?
Look, I'm going to tell you a story. I was so I've met quite a few I believe incredible people in the content creator side on social media, and and they are very different, but I like them all because they are all authentic in what they say, and at the end of the day, they spread the passion for watches, whether it's for collector or young luxury buyer that are new into watches. And those names are obviously, Tim Mosso, Andrew Morgan, and also Nico Leonard. They are all different, but I think they all play a role in that industry. And so anyway, I remember being, with Nico Leonard in Shanghai, like a year and a half ago. And he said to me, Matthieu, if you want to promote more your brand, you have to be closer to the community of collectors, and you have to open your own Instagram account. But I said to him, I hate social media. And he said to me, I mean, you do whatever you want, but it's at some point you have to do it. And I was not yet, at the helm of the company. So anyway, I decided to do it, and so I opened my account and I posted a picture of me. So when I came back from Shanghai, my wife told me, "But what the f are you doing?" I thought you hated, social media, but I did it with the purpose of being able to be a point of contact for, any watch collector, that wants to talk about UN. So obviously it's time consuming, because now I think I've got quite a few DMs, but I try to answer them all, because at the end of the day, for me, it's a matter to create a point of contact, to have a conversation, whatever it is about UN, and many of them might not end up buying UN or might not have the budget to buy UN, but still, we are having a conversation about UN, and that's for me the spirit of opening my own Instagram account, and that's how I'm trying to leverage it. Also for people to realize that there is people behind the brand. The brand is independent. Matthieu is a guy, and if I want to have the opportunity to meet with him, I can. And that's for me also goes into the spirit of what independent watchmaking is,
That's
right?
that's absolutely amazing. It's humbling to see that, even through your career in the watch industry, that community and connecting with people is still your main passion. It's a true passion for you, and I can see that from our conversation. Any last words for anybody that's watching this about whether it's watch collecting, whether it's about UN or where they are on their journey? Any last words that you want to leave everybody with?
Um, I think, maybe regarding my journey as a collector is, I'm going to share something personal. At some point, working in the watch business, because I started to have my passion for watchmaking before entering the industry, and actually I wanted to enter the industry because of my passion. And at some point, I was afraid of losing my passion because it became my job. And so that happened actually in between Jaeger-LeCoultre and Ulysse Nardin. So my last years at Jaeger-LeCoultre, I was so much into Jaeger-LeCoultre that I kind of lost sight a bit of was going outside, and I kind of stopped, wanting, craving for adding watches to my collection up to the last, the first couple of years at UN. So, for 4 or 5 years, I wouldn't say I lost the passion, but I was much less passionate about watches. And working on the management buyout of UN, and becoming again independent, I don't know, that triggered again the passion, but to an extent which is insane now. And I can tell you that my passion for watches has never been so strong than today. I am kind of constantly on the hunt, for watches that I'm looking at, and I'm very happy for me that I got that passion back. But honestly, yes, I mean, what message is it to the audience? I don't know, but I think if at the end of the day you've got that passion for watches, it's already amazing, because there is so many people that don't have passion,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
And
and there is probably a majority of people that have maybe an areas of interest, but true passions, actually it's a minority of people. So we all belong to that minority, and long live watchmaking and long live our passion.
Perfect. And your passion is absolutely contagious. Thank you so much, Matthieu. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Aman.